the material fields, the human bodies, and all the rest of the 8,400,000 different bodily forms. Tata, similarly, Atma Yoga, by spiritual processes. Adhyatma Vid, one who is expert in understanding the distinction between spirit and matter. Brahmagatim, perfection in spiritual life. Labheta may obtain. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. An expert geologist can understand where there is gold and by various processes can extract it from the gold ore. Similarly, a spiritually advanced person can understand how the spiritual particle exists within the body, and thus, by cultivating spiritual knowledge, he can attain perfection in spiritual life. However, as one who is not expert cannot understand where there is gold, a foolish person who has not cultivated spiritual knowledge cannot understand how the spirit exists within the body. Purport. Here is a very good example concerning spiritual understanding. Foolish rascals, including so-called jnanis, philosophers, and scientists, cannot understand the existence of the soul within the body because they are lacking in spiritual knowledge. The Vedas enjoin tat vigna nartam sa gurum eva bigachet. To understand spiritual knowledge, one must approach a bona fide spiritual master. Unless one has been trained in geology, one cannot detect gold in stone. Similarly, unless one has been trained by a spiritual master, he cannot understand what is spirit and what is matter. Here it is said, yoges tat abhigna. This indicates that one who has connected himself with spiritual knowledge can understand that there is a spiritual soul within the body. However, one who is in an animalistic conception of life and has no spiritual culture cannot understand that. As an expert mineralogist or geologist can understand where there is gold and can then invest his money to dig there and chemically separate the gold from the ore, an expert spiritualist can understand where the soul is within matter. One who has not been trained cannot distinguish between gold and stone. Similarly, fools and rascals who have not learned from an expert spiritual master what is soul and what is matter cannot understand the existence of the soul within the body. To understand such knowledge, one must be trained in the mystic yoga system, or finally, in the bhakti yoga system. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita 1855, bhaktiya mam abhijanati. Unless one takes shelter of the bhakti yoga process, one cannot understand, thank you, one cannot understand the existence of the soul within the body. Therefore, Bhagavad Gita begins by teaching. Dehinosmin yata dehe komaram yovaram jara tata dehantara praptir dhiras tatra namuyati. As the embodied soul continuously passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. The self-realized soul is not bewildered by such a change. Bhagavad Gita 2:13. Thus, the first instruction is that one should understand that the soul is within the body and is transmigrating from one body to another. This is the beginning of spiritual knowledge. Any person who is not expert in understanding the science or is unwilling to understand it remains in the bodily conception of life or the animalistic conception of life, as confirmed in Srimad Bhagavatam, Yas Yatma Buddhir Gunapetri Dhatuke Sa Eva Go Kara 1084:13. Every member of human society should clearly understand that the instructions of the Bhagavad Gita, every member of human society should clearly understand the instructions of Bhagavad Gita. For only in this way can one be spiritually elevated and automatically give up the false illusory knowledge by which one thinks, I am this body, and everything belonging to this body is mine. Aham mamet. This doggish conception should be rejected immediately. One should be prepared to understand the spirit soul and the supreme spirit, God, who are eternally related. Thus one may return home back to Godhead, having solved all the problems of life. Om Gyana Timrandasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmitam Yana Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Vanchakalpatrubhyascha Kripa Sindhurevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavabhyo Namo Namaha Vanchakalpatrubhyascha Kripa Sindhurevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavabhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasti Gaur Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So welcome, dear Prabhus, dear devotees. So we continue. Prahlad Maharaj is sharing all that he has learned, and today's verse, we see the analogy being given by Prahlad Maharaj. Just as an expert geologist can understand where there is gold, and by various processes can extract it from the gold ore, similarly, a spiritually advanced person can understand how the spiritual particle exists within the body. And thus, by cultivating spiritual knowledge, he can attain perfection in spiritual life. However, as one who is not expert cannot understand where there is gold, a foolish person who has not cultivated spiritual knowledge cannot understand how the spirit exists within the body. So, for those of us that have been practicing Krishna consciousness, of course, we understand this very basic principle. And we can see that, there's so many verses within the Bhagavad Gita, within the Srimad Bhagavatam, and so many other literatures, but it seems to all revolve around this fundamental fact, this fundamental scientific fact that we are not these bodies, we are spirit souls. And then, of course, trying to understand what is the relationship between the spirit soul and the supreme soul. So these are the basics. Excuse me. These are the basics that one needs to understand. And this analogy given by Prahlad Maharaj is very appropriate, so that, one can understand. If one is not a geologist, then how will you be able to understand that there is gold inside the rock? And of course, also, how will you understand how to remove such gold? So unless you're a trained geologist, you're not going to be able to understand this. So Prabhupada, in his purport, he becomes, really very heavy, comparing that if one does not know these basics, then he compares it to an animalistic conception of life, and you will not be able to understand it. And then later he also mentions, this conception of I am this body and everything belonging to this body is mine, aham mameti. This doggish, again relating to animal life, conception should be rejected immediately. And then this verse that Prabhupada is quoting in the purport 1084:13, this is the beginning of spiritual knowledge. Any person who is not expert in understanding the science or unwilling to understand it remains in the bodily conception of life or animalistic conception of life, as confirmed in the Srimad Bhagavatam 1084:13. And that verse translation is, one who identifies himself as the inert body composed of mucus, bile, and air, who assumes his wife and family are permanently his own, who thinks an earthen image or the land of his birth is worshipable, or who sees a place of pilgrimage as merely the water there, but who never identifies himself with, feels kinship with, worships, or even visits those who are wise in spiritual truth, such a person is no better than a cow or an ass. So, yeah, this is the realities that many would not like to hear. Some people, when they hear discussions or comparisons like this, they can feel offended. They can feel slighted that someone is trying to demean them. But this is the harsh realities of life. That if one does not understand those basic principles of who am I, what is my purpose here in this material world, and spiritual subject matter, then it's no better than animal life, because we see that the animals also have a soul. They're also in this transmigration. So what is the difference between the animal life and human form of life? There has to be something, because we see that animals are eating, sleeping, mating, defending. Humans are eating, sleeping, mating, defending. So what is the difference? The difference is that as a human being, I can ask, what is my purpose? What am I doing here? What is this material world all about? So in the human form of life, we can make a plan of how to get out of this material world, how to go back home, back to Godhead. So the understanding, the analogy given here is that gold exists everywhere in earth, but exactly where and how to go about extracting this gold, not everyone can see. And not everyone, it's not the masses of people know exactly where to go and dig to look for gold. And of course, not everyone knows how to extract it. So, we've seen examples sometimes given a child, when he's playing out in the dirt, what does he see? He just sees dirt and rocks. Sometimes, older person, he'll be able to see, different types of stones. They all look a little different. But when a geologist, sees a particular type of stone, particular type of rock in a certain location or area, then immediately, he sees potential wealth. So similarly, everyone has a body, everyone has some intelligence, and everyone is also experiencing suffering in this material world. But, in general, the masses of people cannot understand, they all know they have a body. Of course, as far as intelligence is concerned, there are some people being trained, furthering their studies, trying to use the intelligence in this way. So they can understand there is this intelligence. And of course, some people are suffering, some people are suffering more than others. These concepts people can understand. But from the Bhagavad Gita, we can understand that it's only a trained spiritualist, a trained spiritual master who can see that there is a soul. And this is the material body which can be used for the purposes of liberation, going back home, back to Godhead. So in the verse, it's used, the words are used, Kshetreshu Deheshu, within the fields of this body. And so in Bhagavad Gita 13.3, we're given the analogy from Krishna, O sign of Bharat, you should understand that I am the knower in all bodies. And to understand this body and its knower is called knowledge. Of course, Krishna finishes that by saying, that is my opinion. And he does that in so many places. This is my opinion. And we as living entities, of course, we have this minute free will. So, we can choose to accept or we can choose to reject. And so, I am the knower in all bodies. That's what Krishna is mentioning in that verse. So as far as the analogy is concerned, the body is like a field, a work site, you can say, temporary lease. So the analogy, modern analogy one can use is that, let's see if we can understand this analogy. Of, this body and the supreme knower of the body and how to utilize the body for its proper purpose. So we can see that the materialists, when they see the body, they think that this body is meant to be decorated, very, very nicely. And so all sorts of, decorations can be there on the body to make one look beautiful, so-called beautiful. Then, of course, now there's so much of plastic surgery going on, trying to change the shape of this body, so that it can be dressed up or decorated more and more. And so everybody in society today is just caught up in decorating this material body. But how does a devotee view the body? The devotee views the body that, there is this material, I have this material body, but I should use it to cultivate bhakti, to cultivate spiritual knowledge. And how do I go about doing that? Bhagavad Gita says that one should approach a bona fide spiritual master. Tat vidi pranipatena pariprasnena sevaya upedhikshyanti te jnanam jnaninas tatvata darshinaha. Just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire from him submissively and render service unto him. The self-realized souls can impart knowledge unto you because they have seen the truth. So Prabhupada in that purport is mentioning that, spiritual realization is undoubtedly difficult. And therefore, the Lord advises us to approach a bona fide spiritual master in the line of disciplic succession from the Lord himself. No one can be a bona fide spiritual master without following the principles of disciplic succession. So Prahlad Maharaj also went through this, process of disciplic succession and how important it is. The Lord is the original spiritual master, and a person in the disciplic succession can convey the message of the Lord as it is to his disciple. No one can be spiritually realized by manufacturing his own process, as is the fashion of foolish pretenders. So spiritual life can be tricky, and we can see in the case of the Mayavadis, even the Gyanis, that somehow they understand, there is this spiritual knowledge, and it needs to be cultivated, but then they get, very distracted and go off on a tangent and, just try to remain on the intellectual platform, which eventually bewilders them. And so by approaching a bona fide spiritual master coming in disciplic succession from Krishna himself, then you will be able to impart this science of bhakti yoga to him. And in this way, one can gradually extricate himself by understanding exactly what is matter, what is spirit, and how to get out of this cycle of birth and death. So we see for the masses of people, there's no spiritual training. They don't have a bona fide guru. They're just accepting any bogus guru, someone who might do some miracle in front of their own eyes. Society today are not taking advantage of sadhus, holy places. And so, we're remembering Chanakya Pandit's insight. People are just trying to accumulate wealth, immense wealth. But, we can see, even the layman can see that, look at Hollywood, how many people are truly happy. So many of them have, given biographies, testimonies that despite, such immense wealth, still they are not happy. So everybody is searching for happiness in this material world. And so Chanakya Pandit was saying, in so many places, so many references, but one of the purports was mentioning that a moment of life cannot be bought with millions of gold coins. So time is very, very valuable, and we should not waste it uselessly, trying to cultivate spiritual knowledge, even just intellectually, without any end in sight, because you can stay in this continuous loop, cycle of changing bodies as a result. So the analogy for the spiritual, taking a bona fide spiritual master, of course, the comparison is you cannot self-train to become a geologist. So no matter how much one wants to become a geologist, yes, now the internet's available, one can try to do some research and figure out, where there is gold. But unless one goes to college, and receives this knowledge in a bona fide way, then you can become a real geologist. Otherwise, you'll just remain speculating, guessing. Here there's gold, there's gold, and continue this speculation. So as far as the spirit soul is concerned, there's no need of speculating about the soul. All the descriptions, aspects of the soul is already described in the Vedic literatures. There's no reason to invent your own path. So Srila Prabhupada, of course, has come and given us this treasure house of nectar. So he's given us his books, and that analogy can be given as far as geology is concerned, that he's given us the maps of all the gold mines. Srila Prabhupada has also given us deity worship so that we can have some relationship and a presence of Sri Bhagavan, Swayam Bhagavan, so that we can gradually develop our forgotten relationship with the Supreme. And of course, he's given us the process to do it. The process is Bhakti Yoga, and we can gradually make spiritual advancement. And like Prabhupada mentions in the last line of the purport, thus one may return home back to Godhead, having solved all the problems of life. Nice. So I think we mentioned this before, that time is very, very valuable, and we should treat time as a spiritual currency. We said that one exercise we can do on a daily basis is, reflect on your activities and how God conscious, Krishna conscious you have been throughout the day. And in this way, we can gradually make spiritual advancement. So, relating to this particular verse, we can enhance that analogy or that question we ask ourselves on a daily basis. We can ask ourselves, did I extract some gold today, or did I just move some stones around? So we know japa is very, very important. We know the morning hours are very best for us to practice our sadhana, and we can take advantage on a daily basis of connecting with the holy names of the Lord. So in whatever, position we see ourselves in society today, work environments, if I'm a farmer, you may have a professional job, you might be a parent, one can constantly throughout the day, reflect on remembering Krishna. We should never forget Krishna. And of course, we understand as part of this bhakti yoga process, we want to offer all the results of our work back to Krishna. And this work becomes real yoga, connecting with the Supreme. And, in this way, our family life can become like an ashram as well. And gradually, we can cultivate our relationship with the Supreme Lord. So we should not, of course, forget association is very, very important. And we understand that bhakti grows in the association of devotees, sadhu sangha. We spoke about it previously, that we need to be careful what kind of sadhu sangha am I getting. It just doesn't mean because we're devotees, everybody has got the same goal, same intention. Yes, theoretically we all should, but we should choose our sadhu sangha very, very carefully. Otherwise, by just like we said last week, just by saying, yes, this devotee also feels a certain way about other devotees, so then in this way I'm getting proper association. No, we need to question that kind of association as well. So we see that Srila Prabhupada has given us the map, he's given us the tools, he's given us the process. This human form of life is very, very rare, and we should take advantage of this human form of life and understand what is matter, what is spirit from a bona fide spiritual master, and in this way become qualified to go back home, back to Godhead. Let us become sober miners, mining bhakti yoga, and not just become like we have so much in society today, persons collecting rare stones. So let us not become just a stone collector. Let us become a sober miner. And so the conclusion is that if we do not extract bhakti from this life, then in the future, unfortunately, we will not perfect ourselves, and we will return again back to the material world to continue digging in another body and another type of illusion. But if we succeed, then we will, like Prabhupada said, return home back to Godhead at the end of this lifetime. Okay, that's the thoughts and reflections I had. Anybody? Has any comments, questions? Mira's not eating her grains.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Dhruva Maharaj Prabhu. Thank you for a very nice class. And I have a question, which is in today's verse. The example is given that an expert knows both where to look for gold and how to extract it. And so my question is, in practical devotional life, what are the main processes that help us actually separate the gold from the ore, or to experience ourselves as spirit rather than body?
So we understand it can become very, very tricky, and especially for devotees that have been practicing for some time, it can become very, very tricky because, we think that we're just in the association of devotees. So, it's all good, we're all protected. But the basic tenets is, of course, chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. But of course, chanting, we understand, is very, very powerful. Like we learned in the example of Ajmel, that, just one name, is so powerful that we see in that example, the Vishnu Dutas came to get him. So this is how powerful one name is. But then we also understand that there's so many offenses that one can commit in chanting the holy names of the Lord. So one needs to avoid all of these offenses. So if one is sincerely, and of course, that can be debated, what is sincerity? But as we gradually chant this holy name of the Lord, requesting, my dear Lord, please engage me in your devotional service, taking advantage of the association of devotees, and seriously endeavoring to follow the instructions of the spiritual master, then Krishna will help and make so many arrangements for this devotee. Of course, there's all of these ancillary things like, taking prasadam, congregational chanting of the holy names is there. Still, this basic sadhana has to be there. And if this sadhana is lacking, then we might not take the best of the association. So for devotees, at least in our community, we spoke about it previously, that, we don't have sannyasis, advanced devotees, just coming visiting, every week or every day. Still, we have each other to help each other advance in our Krishna consciousness. And so if it is done, in the proper mood and spirit, as advised by our spiritual masters, then one will get the proper result. Otherwise, we can just stay, we've heard of these examples, we can just stay stuck, even as devotees, for many, many lifetimes, unfortunately. What to speak of this very lifetime, just remain stuck for years. Someone could be practicing devotee for 30 years, 50 years even, and not make any spiritual advancement. So we should always be seeking out advanced association of course. But who's to say who's advanced and who's not advanced? But the Bhagavad Gita is very, very clear. It gives us all the qualities of advanced devotees. And we can analyze, amongst ourselves, who are the serious practitioners of Bhakti Yoga and who are not. Who are the devotees sincerely trying. And, we don't have to get caught up in giving feedback to devotees. We don't have to get caught up in finding fault in other devotees. We should worry about our own spiritual advancement. And if we're concerned about our own spiritual advancement, getting directions from the spiritual master, advanced devotees, this way we can remain protected. Our Bhakti Lata Beach can be protected. Otherwise, there's so much going on in society today that one can become very, very bewildered very, very quickly, especially as devotees. So we shouldn't take devotee association for granted. Many of us that have been around a few years. Also, we've spoken about that before. You can be attending, for example, the Sunday feast program, in a city temple, for example, and not make any spiritual advancement. Because, you go for the Sunday feast, you might listen, you might understand some of the subject matter, take prasadam, see a few devotees, say Haribol, and go home, and continuously repeat this. But unless one is, practically inquiring from the spiritual master submissively, how do I make spiritual advancement? Get the mercy of the spiritual master and advanced devotees. Then one can begin to understand what is matter, what is spirit. Otherwise, I might just be stuck thinking that I am advanced, continuously finding fault with others, and take another birth, unfortunately. So we need to become very, very serious. That's my thoughts and realizations. Maybe there's a scholarly answer and a textbook answer also. Please share with us your realizations, devotees, or Taraka Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu. We have a little time.
Sure.
I have another question.
Mm-hmm.
So the verse is saying that without training, one cannot recognize the soul.
Mm-hmm.
And we've talked about some of the process for undergoing that training.
Mm-hmm.
So what then, if we examine ourselves, what are some of the signs that a person is beginning to move from bodily consciousness towards spiritual vision?
Well, he'll, of course, be able to conduct himself as the Bhagavad Gita advises. We understand we're all acting in the modes. We're either acting in the mode of ignorance, mode of passion, or mode of goodness. And so we need to start to gradually elevate ourselves from animal life, like Prabhupada is mentioning in the purport a couple of times, that we'll be able to gradually uplift ourselves from animal life, come to the human platform, and gradually try to, by cultivating spiritual knowledge, gradually uplift yourself from the mode of ignorance. Because if we look at our activities on a daily basis, on a daily second basis, minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day basis, gradually elevate yourself and your habits, um, the things that you do, the way you eat, the way you sit, the way you speak, from the mode of ignorance, gradually elevate yourself, mode of passion. And, the hope, of course, is to come to the mode of goodness, at least in this human form of life. And then if we are able to, cultivate these habits in the mode of goodness, then gradually we can use the mode of goodness as a springboard to get onto the transcendental platform. And so in this way, we can gradually, Prabhupada mentions this word gradually. It's not, going to happen overnight. You read Bhagavad Gita, you understand all the qualities in these different modes, and then the next day you're a changed man. No, gradually you have to recognize all of your bad habits. Someone may have to point it out to you. But let's not go looking to point out everybody else's bad habits. Let's try to find our own bad habits first, because they're all there. And in this way, gradually, we can extricate ourselves from these bad habits. So it's tricky, Taraka Prabhu, unfortunately. Yes, it's scientific, but it is tricky. I've used this example with countless devotees. If we have a tick box, we should make, these tick boxes, spreadsheets. Am I chanting 16 rounds? Yes, I'm chanting 16 rounds. Are you following the 4 regulative principles? Yes, I'm following the 4 regulative principles. Are you associating with devotees? Yes, there's lots of devotees around me. We become proud like this. And this kind of pride doesn't help us. So we can tick all of these boxes. I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm doing this. Yes, I take a bath, I come to the temple. Yes, I do this, I do that. And still remain stuck as a devotee for 30 years, unfortunately. So it's the whole, mood and mission that we are being trained in, that's coming down in disciplic succession, that we need to cultivate, not just theoretically prove, yes, I'm a devotee because I, follow the 4 regular principles, chant 16, minimum 16 rounds every day. We can be doing all of these things mechanically and, continuously remain in the cycle of birth and death. So that's my take on it. Any more questions, thoughts, realizations, additions, subtractions? It's deeper than that. We have to start somewhere, of course. Doesn't mean if I've been, how long have I been practicing now? Doesn't mean if I've been practicing 30 years that I'm an advanced devotee. Doesn't mean, anything. So we sometimes, in this hope that I want to make spiritual advancement, it's kind of like this hope that, yes, because I've spent my time 30 years, around with devotees, I have to be advanced. Yes, you may have shed some layers, but we understand that, we've been conditioned for millions and trillions and billions and gazillions of lifetimes. So yes, we may have shed, 0.00001% in my 30 years. But does that qualify me to go back home, back to Godhead? And then I've heard, so many devotees around me say, but Prabhupada said he's got the back door key. So he will let me in. My spiritual master is a pure devotee. Because I took initiation from him, I'm all set. But my understanding is that, unfortunately, it might not be true that we've become eligible to go back home, back to Godhead. I might have to take many, many births to become eligible. Yes, the opportunity is there. Prabhupada has given us everything. He's given us the map. He's given us the tools. But unfortunately, because we all have free will, we have to accept it and do the work. And it's not easy being in the material world. It's very, very deep. And we need to become serious. Otherwise, if I'm not serious enough, I'm just going to remain stuck. It's a very important subject matter you are raising, Taraka Prabhu. Thank you for being so introspective.
Prabhupada said there is such a thing as an honorary degree.
Right.
We should not count on that.
Right.
We should do the work and not expect that somehow or other we're going to get an honorary degree.
Nice example. Yes. I mean, the nice thing is, like we said earlier, that the nice thing is, even though things may seem insurmountable in our lives, right now, today, even though things may seem insurmountable, we should not lose courage. We should chant anyway. So even if some of you may have seen that quote, that even if my chanting is bad, doesn't mean you need to stop chanting. Continue to chant. But, seriously pray to Krishna somehow or the other. That I need to improve my chanting, get the proper association. Harichakra Prabhu, please share with us your thoughts and realizations on this intricate subject matter.
Yeah, Hare Krishna Prabhu. Dandava Pranam, all glories to you and all glories to Prabhupada. All glories to the assembled devotees. Yeah, thank you very much for your class. You really did hit on some crucial points. And the question that Taraka Prabhu asked and the answer you gave, you actually made some substantive points. But one particular thing that I personally realize is that there are two personalities that you cannot deceive in this world.
Mm-hmm.
One is Krishna, and number two is yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If you are doing anything wrong, you yourself know, and Krishna knows.
Mm-hmm.
So in practicing devotional service, if you are doing it for to get the honor out of it, or you are doing it to be praised, or you are doing it for some material goals, thinking about it, and Krishna knows. You see, sometimes we may pretend, oh yeah, I'm doing this is from my heart, but deep within you yourself know that no, I want some praises, I want something. And if it happens like that, definitely you'll be doing it for a long time without seeing. Of course, there will be some benefit, but that benefit is like it's even slower than the movement of the tortoise.
Right.
So we ourselves, we know whatever we do, if it's service we are doing, if it's whatever sankirtan we are doing, if even it's chanting, am I chanting sincerely in my heart that I'm trying to put the best of my effort.
Mhm.
If you are very sincere in your heart, Krishna knows your sincerity. And that sincerity alone is enough for you to
Right.
make quick advancement.
Right.
But if I'm chanting for everyone to know that I'm chanting my rounds, I'm chanting so that people, oh yeah, this time I'm trying my best. I'm doing 25 rounds. I'm doing 32 rounds. I mean, you might be doing it for a long time.
Right.
It's not that there's no benefit. There's benefit, all right. If even you do it mechanically, there's still some benefit.
Mhm.
But that benefit might be very slow, that you will be here for like 40 years, 30 years, 20 years, 50 years, and might not be even seeing some progress. So, yeah, I think that is one of the hitches in our devotional path, that individually we might not be sincere with ourselves.
Mhm.
And most of the thing we do is like eye service. That is very important. Look at the initial people that Prabhupada recruited. Those people were doing marvelously. Why? Because they were sincere. And if Prabhupada asked them to do something, they never thought of their personal, what we call it, goals. Prabhupada say I should do this. The person is so committed with life and body, everything, mind, soul, everything, because Prabhupada said it. See, so those initial people that Prabhupada devotees, if we really look at them, the way they were so committed to Prabhupada, I think that can give us some impetus to also be able to forge ahead with our devotional life. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much. And thank you again. I mean, we've said it many times, but thank you also for being on the class roster on Sundays and sharing your wisdom and knowledge in a very, very practical way for devotees to, understand and assimilate. And I pray that more and more devotees will, take advantage of that kind of association and not underestimate it in a, very, very practical way. So yes, we need to make some serious endeavors, and Krishna will reciprocate with, the sincerity. That's, ultimately what it boils down to. When one is sincere, then, there will be, even if you might not be qualified, even if you might be a new devotee, Krishna is ultimately reciprocating with, our sincerity. I know we've heard this phrase used so often, but how many of us ponder on it? That what am I holding back? Yes, I might be giving. I might be a multimillionaire, and I might be giving. Hundreds of thousands of dollars to this charity and that charity and this temple and that temple and so many things. But yeah, you need to look at where you're at and what you're capable of doing and what are you holding back. And we understand the example of Sudamar Brahman is there. How he didn't have much of anything to offer. He just had that chipped rice. But even if just that chipped rice given with sincerity and love, this is what Krishna is looking for. And until such time that we're intellectually calculating what's in it for me, what do I get out of it? What's the benefit for me? Until such time, Krishna will continue playing this game. It's actually your game. It's not Krishna's game. It's actually your game that you're trying to play and, offload it onto him. So let us become serious, serious miners, like this verse is saying, and, kick our bad habits, all these baggages that we've been carrying around for so many lifetimes, and embrace this, loving devotional service with Krishna at the center. So, Sri Sri Radha Damodara there at the center of all of our lives. And, let us come together and really please them. Anyone else has their hands up? Yes, Jagannath Pandit Prabhu, please bless us. I think you're here, right? Oh no, that's dirt on my computer, sorry. Taraka Prabhu, please go ahead.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, we're talking a little bit about some of the pitfalls in devotional life, and you mentioned how it can be tricky. There's so many ways to slip up, and I'm reminded of an incident that happened. I think it was in 1976. Maybe it was 77. I'm not sure anymore. But Mayapur, during the festival, it was this time of year, and so all the devotees are in Mayapur. All the GBC men are there, all the temple presidents, many big book distributors, and the entire Radha Damodar party had come to India. And Tamal Krishna and Vishnu Jan had been doing an extraordinary job of inspiring the devotees to distribute books. Huge numbers of books had been distributed, and Srila Prabhupada was very pleased by that, of course. But I'm thinking this was 76, because Vishnu Jan Maharaj disappeared. That's another big story, but so all the temple presidents approached Srila Prabhupada one morning. They were taking a walk on the roof of the mandir, and they were all very, very unhappy with the Radha Damodar party, because the Radha Damodar party had been traveling all over the country and drawing many of the devotees, the men, brahmacharis mostly, were drawn away from the temple, joined the Radha Damodar party, and so the temples were becoming depleted. They were losing book distributors and losing their means of support, and the Radha Damodar party was growing exponentially. The brahmacharis were very enthusiastic to be involved in the Radha Damodar party, in the association of wonderful sannyasis, and distributing lots of books without any of the encumbrances of temple life, no women to contend with. And so the party was growing and doing tremendous service, distributing immense numbers of books. But the temple presidents were very unhappy. And so Srila Prabhupada heard their complaints patiently, and then he spoke to Tamal Krishna Maharaj. I got the chance to watch all this unfold. And so Srila Prabhupada was chastising Tamal Krishna Maharaj. And Tamal Krishna Maharaj was initially defensive. And I'm making a long story very short here, but he said, but Srila Prabhupada, I've done so much service. We've done so much service. Maybe, we ruffled a few feathers here and there, but for the sake of distributing your books, we've distributed so many books, more than anybody anywhere. We've surpassed all the other temples by a huge margin. We've done so much service. And Srila Prabhupada responded by telling him that, yes, you've done so much service, but you failed to please the devotees. And it took a little while for this to register with Tamal Krishna Maharaj. He continued to defend for a while. And Srila Prabhupada was Srila Prabhupada was quite upset. And in order to appease the temple presidents, and also there were many women that were offended by the attitude that had been cultivated amongst the Radha Damodar men who had a very condescending attitude towards the women and were sometimes abusive verbally or otherwise. So Srila Prabhupada was quite upset about all of this. And he removed Tamal Krishna from his service of heading up the Radha Damodar party. And he told him that I'm sending you to China. So at the time, for a devotee to be sent to China was like being, I don't know, it was like a terrible punishment, being sent to Siberia or something. There were no established temples at the time. There were no devotees. And the government was hostile towards devotees. There was no known preaching field at the time. It was a huge challenge. Preaching had to be done undercover. So Tamal Krishna was quite upset about all this, and he couldn't understand how Srila Prabhupada would remove him from such a tremendous service. The Radha Damodar party was doing huge service like no one had ever seen before. It was immense, and Srila Prabhupada didn't care. When Tamal Krishna was removed from the Radha Damodar party, it meant the end of the Radha Damodar party. The Radha Damodar party ended. And that's why we don't have a Radha Damodar party now. That's why Radha Damodar here at Gita Nagari. Srila Prabhupada stopped everything. He was that disturbed. He didn't care about the volume of the service that was done. The fact that devotees were hurt and offended was more important to him. And so the Radha Damodar party was shut down in spite of doing tremendous service in order to make a point and to correct the mistakes. Anyway, it's the story illustrates and the very important point that it's important to keep the devotees happy, and that you can't neglect the devotees, even for the sake of immense devotional service. You can do tremendous amounts of service, but as far as Srila Prabhupada was concerned, it doesn't matter if the devotees are not happy. Anyway, I thought it was a valuable point.
Yes, thank you for sharing that example.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu, for sharing that example. Very, very nice analogy, very nice example. Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, more than, of course, everybody's stressing this point. So many pure devotees are stressing this point. But, Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, he also brought it very close to home for us in a very practical and relatable way. That very analogy or very example that you're citing of the Radha Damodar party, but Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj was always very, very big on, it's not about the how, what you do, whether it's right or wrong. So even though you may do something, so-called, I did it right, or try to justify it in that way, Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj was always pointing out to his disciples and to the devotees in general, no, it's not about being right. It's not a question about being right. Am I right? Am I wrong? It's not a question of that. He always stressed the point of the how. How did you go about doing it? And I think in one class, I also gave you one personal example of interaction I had with Maharaj. And about kleptomania. There was one devotee that was a kleptomaniac, and she had this tendency of just taking things. So it's a psychological condition that has been well researched and documented, and it is a fact. And so of course I had to deal with that situation, and I basically presented it, and next thing they were ready to sue me for defamation of character. So I was bewildered by the whole interaction exchange, and later I approached Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, and so eventually somehow or the other it got resolved. And so my question was, what did I do wrong? And of course, the lesson was, no, it's not about what you did wrong, it's the how. And maybe there was other ways to do it. So yes, Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj definitely stressed how we go about doing things. That's very, very important. It's not about right or wrong. But it is interesting in your analogy, like you said, without going into the details, Prabhupada wanted the devotees to be pleased. And in all circumstances, I think every person should always factor that. But please let us not make the mistake of pleasing the devotees and keeping them stuck, sometimes in ignorance even. So this is not pleasing the devotees. We need to understand properly where are we at, and what are we trying to please. So let us not take that analogy and example, that powerful analogy and example that Prabhupada was setting an example of, and just apply it without all the details. During the time there was, like you were explaining, women and children were really sidelined, sidetracked, even removed from temples. If you were a grihasta, you were considered fallen. And, there was a certain focus. So, yeah, it wasn't about just pleasing the devotees. It was, okay, this whole thing needs an overhaul. And, if we had to do it today, I think we'd do it a little differently. Even if we have to get another bus and get permission from the ministry to put Radha Damodar back on the bus and start traveling again, I think we'll do it very, very differently, not in the way it was done back in the day. Not that it was wrong, it's just about, there's different ways of doing it. So I think we should take that lesson definitely from Prabhupada, that yes, we want the devotees to be pleased, but what do we want to be pleased about? Because this feeling of I'm happy might keep us stuck for another 30 or 50 years. So we don't want to remain stuck for another 30 or 50 years. If there's, genuine things that need to be corrected, realigned, repositioned, yes, we want to do that. And I think, at least in Gita Nagari, we have, such a wonderful collection of experience and wisdom that we can practically, without dogma, resolve, whatever needs to be resolved. I think Prabhupada has given us the tools. Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, particularly, if some of us can remember some of the training we got from Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, we can quickly resolve, whatever needs to be resolved. So yes, devotees need to be happy in all circumstances, happy about the right things, because spiritual life is, not cheap. Like this verse is telling us, spiritual life is by all means not cheap. We need to try to extract the essence of bhakti. Otherwise, we'll just keep coming back and taking birth again and digging for stones. Anyone else has any thoughts, realizations they want to share with the devotees? What makes it difficult, I think, is, like Devamrita Maharaj always quotes, in any situation, how many angles or points of view there is? If there's two people involved, is there 2 points of view? No, there can be at least, he says, 108. at least. So there's different angles, viewpoints, and we want to talk about these things. That's the beauty about Gita Nagari also. Bhakti Tirthamaj trained so many devotees about, how to go about discussing these sensitive topics, sensitive subject matter. He gave his life practically training devotees, training some disciples, how to do this. So we should, reflect on these things and take advantage of all of this training that has been given by Bhakti Tirthamaj. And then what makes it more challenging also is that, yeah, it's intricate. So we should not underestimate that. It can be very, very tricky. Maya can be very, very tricky in how she presents it. But like I've said many, many times that, Maya has no new tricks. We understand it's the age of quarrel and hypocrisy. And that's all on her agenda, to just bewilder the devotees. So we should not fall trap to that. And then, of course, the famous last saying that I always remember from Devamrita Maharaj is that the Hare Krishna movement, the movement of good intentions. Everybody has good intentions. I don't think any devotee we can charge with has bad intentions. So nobody's saying that devotee has bad intentions, this devotee has good intentions. Nobody's doing any categories like that. Every one of us has good intentions. But still, we can dig a little deeper, become like a geologist, miner, and find the nectar. Mother Lily Kishori, please enlighten us with your wisdom and realizations. Please, please.
Hi, Krishna. Good morning. What a wonderful class. And I was also thinking, what a blessing. You didn't get like 20 emergency phone calls, and we really got to appreciate your instruction. It was wonderful. And just the discussion afterwards. And what I really got out of this class was that my insides need to match my outsides. And you were speaking about, like, I can chant, 32 rounds a day and take 6 showers and, eat only raw vegetables. And if in my heart I'm harboring resentment toward another devotee, my house is not clean. And in the Christian Bible, it's 1 Corinthians, I think 6:19, Hari Chapter probably knows, where it says, don't you know that your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit indwelling in your heart? Like, it's not your own. You don't belong to yourself. And that's what I was thinking, is that I need to really be mindful. I don't live in this body by myself. Paramatma lives here too. Am I keeping the house clean? And I can, like I think we said, I can fool a whole lot of people a lot of the time. But I think it was Shakespeare who wrote, to thine own self be true, and as night follows day, you can't be false to any other man. If I'm being honest, rigorously honest with Krishna and with myself, just coming as I am and being honest about my faults, then I'm going to be willing to be vulnerable and to take guidance and to put them out there so that they can be removed. I can't do that myself, and I can chant and chant and chant, but if I'm not willing to cooperate with that level of honesty, then nothing's going to change, right? Nothing changes, nothing changes. So thank you. That's what I'm walking away with today.
Amen. Amen.
Appreciate your instruction, and I so appreciate Taraka Prabhu's input and the pastimes of Srila Prabhupada. It's just delightful. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much. Okay, any last words of introspection on the mining analogy? All right, thank you, devotees, for your time. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Grantraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Go Pramanande, Hari Hari Bo. I think I have to connect that other computer. Okay, I think I don't know how to do that so now.